Australia is burning and our Prime Minister is also going down in flames. Peter Wilkinson, ever since Scott Morrison took that trip to Hawaii, every move he's made since just seemed to be a PR disaster.
So, yes, and it's been very unfortunate, and you wonder why. And when in corporate affairs, we look for patterns so that we can prevent this happening next time, so that we can learn from our mistakes and hopefully prevent mistakes happening such as that one. There are four critical things that we look at. We look at once the strategy's set. We look at unity. We look at key messages. We look at the spokesperson, and we look at nimbleness. I just wonder if, in this case, the spokesperson, that is ScoMo, wasn't exhausted, and he just made a really bad decision. It's possible that strategically his minders didn't look after him and should have warned him, but perhaps they were exhausted too. Scott Morrison's a highly skilled politician, and he's handled very, very difficult issues for many, many years. You know, the whole Stop the Boats campaign has been very difficult, then as Treasurer, and then instantly becoming the aspirant for Prime Minister and then winning the election. All of them terribly difficult tasks that he's achieved magnificently, and he's slipped up badly on this one.
Absolutely, and his minders have definitely let him down because he is completely out of touch with the everyday Australian. Going on a holiday to Hawaii while Australia is burning is just ludicrous.
Well, it is ludicrous, and once again, it's the I just wonder if it's not tiredness, or bad strategy, and then poor key messaging coming back without the abject apology, which could have got him out of a lot of trouble. There was a qualified apology, which just seemed an awful pity, and there's a history of Justin Trudeau is probably the most obvious recent leader who's apologised completely after the scandal to do with his blackening his face last year. So there are ways out when you've made a serious mistake.
It was a bad mistake for Morrison, and what I can't believe is David Elliott, the New South Wales Emergency Services Minister, followed him in after the furore, and went to Europe. And I understand he'd worked 112 days straight in the lead up to that, and he'd done an exceptional job. And I understand that they're working hard and long hours, and it's a tough job, and they cop a beating. But who is advising these people to let them go overseas, particularly after Morrison copped a hammering for going overseas?
Well, again, strategically, I think that was a bad decision. And David Elliott, again, he's been around for a long time. He's come up through corporate affairs. He's come up through Clubs New South Wales, so he's very familiar with crisis, difficult issues. So it's just surprising that he too made such a poor decision. The other ones that are worth looking at as far as the last 12 months, there are two bank crises.
NAB and Westpac.
And again, you're looking at patterns that you can learn from. NAB, Post-Royal Commission, Andrew Thorburn, another person who was also on holidays when the report was released, and then Ken Henry, his chair, who and why Thorburn went on holidays and why Ken Henry had such an appalling experience through the Royal Commission. As a result of them, both lost their jobs. And then at the end of last year was Westpac and the money laundering scandal. And the issue there was, remember the four things we talked about, the issue there was lack of nimbleness. Had the CEO gone quickly, it's possible that the board might have survived. We don't know the internal workings, but the board was very slow to respond. So was that lack of unity? And then the spokesperson, should have gone really quickly. That was lack of nimbleness. So those are two really salient lessons to learn there.
Yeah. The spokesperson, that's a big thing. I mean, one of the huge criticisms of Scott Morrison is that he dodges questions, that he's running away and it doesn't sit well and his messages don't hit the mark. And that's a common theme as well among the NAB, Westpac, Rugby Australia's fight with Israel Folau, Prince Andrew, the Labor Party, it's a common thread among all of them, poor spokespeople and not having the right messaging. It's crucial, isn't it?
So with Rugby Australia, you've got to look at their strategy. When you've got a very high profile situation and you know there's going to be media everywhere, there's no point in taking a strategy that says, let's minimise media, because the media is going to happen anyway. Had Rugby Australia come out and gone head to head with Israel Folau explaining Rugby Australia's situation in something that was going to be high media for months and months, the outcome might have been entirely different. So again, you've got to look at, and again, you've got to wonder whether there was lack of unity at board level. Their messaging was on the money. The spokesperson, I think, let Rugby Australia down. That's Raylene Castle. And the lack of nimbleness. Nimbleness means in a situation like that where you've got media that you simply can't avoid, there's going to be media everywhere. You've got to be first out each day. The early bird gets the worm in those situations.
100%. Control the message. Get on the front foot.
You just get ahead of the media, and it's very unlikely that Israel Folau could have been more responsive than Rugby Australia had they gone on the front foot, and the outcome would have been different.
Peter Wilkinson, that's...
The same, just got to say, it's the same with Labor in the election. Had they been more nimble when Scott Morrison took over Turnbull's job, the outcome might have been different. Again, there was problems with too many messaging, so the messaging was wrong. There was problems with the spokesperson, as Bill Shorten, and there was a lack of nimbleness. There are always these, you can see patterns in corporate affairs failure, and it's so useful to learn from them that once you've set your strategy, you've got to have unity. You can't have people breaking ranks. You've got to have a strong spokesperson. You've got to have values-driven messages that connect with stakeholders, and you've got to be nimble. And then in addition to that, you've got to have, you've just got to keep things dead simple, stay on the main game and be well resourced.
You know who does that well? Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister. She's fantastic. When there's I think Scott Morrison could learn so much from her. When there's a crisis, she leads from the front. She speaks with compassion. She's there among the people. She's real, she's honest, she's raw. There's no spin, there's no rubbish. It's just up front, what you see is what you get. And I think she's so popular and we all gravitate towards her. She hits the nail on the head every time, I think.
Yep, there's a lot to be learnt from watching politicians who are, a variety of politicians who are empathetic, nimble, the messages hit the mark, they speak with conviction, a depth of conviction that's values-based.
Well, we're off to a cracker for 2020, plenty to talk about. We'll see you next week.